And I mean, just as any kind of coder that you both are, we are very dependent on being able to search efficiently on Stack Overflow, right?
For sure.
And we would be completely lost if that suddenly goes down, which it actually did, I think, recently, which was really annoying. But don't you find it surprising how well you can just search in natural language and it finds stuff on Stack Overflow today surprisingly well? With just natural language, like, I don't understand how can you fix the JavaScript bug when it's blah blah close something, and you can write in natural language and still understand it, right?
Oh yeah, I to be honest, I don't search on Stack Overflow that much. Primarily, I would search on Google, and then I get like the Stack Overflow link as a result. To be honest, true. Or else I would do like what works really well. Like if you have more like an internal question, I think is like searching on Slack, because someone is gonna have probably had the same problem where you can search like for like some error message on Slack, and then you're gonna find like some other person like asking the question about it. So I think that's like I think that's like actually what I do more, like searching on Slack or searching on Google, and then if you go into Stack Overflow from Google.
So and Slack, you're going into a specific community channel for a specific area or code. What Slack are you searching in? Or in general?
Yeah, in general. Like I mean, like internal, like the Spotify Slack.
Yeah. Internal Spotify Slack. Yeah.
And we have this. I mean, we have this support channel. So maybe I would go to a support channel but I would probably just search like any channel.
Yeah.
But just as you said, basically most like internal searches, if it's for an e-commerce or if it's on Stack Overflow, usually Google is so much better in finding stuff anyway. So you even want to avoid using the internal search functionality and just write site colon whatever. And
then, for sure,
right?
I agree.
Yeah, it's a bit annoying and it's a bit scary as well.
It's annoying that they're too good.
It is, exactly.
But of course, I mean, they're such a big company and there's such a big search focus. I mean, if you have like a smaller e-commerce site or something, I mean, of course, like I don't know, I mean, they're probably not building their search themselves, I assume. Like they buy it from someone else and it's,
But a side note, is there even a competition when you use now in cars, Apple-oriented or Android-oriented navigation systems? I used to have an Apple car. So Siri, she was terrible at finding the way or finding ICA or whatever. And I'm actually very, very happy with the Google-based approach I'm using right now. I think it's, I don't know, I think it's multiples better. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'm happy to go into Apple versus Google if you want to. I don't think we should go down that rabbit hole right now. But you open up the rabbit hole a bit here. But going back to the search question, and I think you mentioned some point that at some point you felt like the Google search functionality is really improving in an impressive way. What did you mean with that?
Well, it was like a very specific thing. Like this was almost a year ago. Yeah. So I was watching Sankta Lucia, this like Lucia Morgon, when they have this like the performance close to like is it the 13th, right, on December, and it's like every year they have this like the singing and like the choir. Yeah. So I was watching that last year, and I didn't watch it live. I watched it like as it was recorded, like a bit later, streaming it with the family, with the kids. And then I think it was from Jukkasjärvi, so very far up north in Sweden. And then they were showing like some scenic photos like of the nature, like the sun and the snow and so. And then the sun was rising. Yeah. And I was watching it so I didn't watch it live, but I was watching it later on. But I know it was had been aired like in the morning and being recorded. And I thought it's no way like the sun is rising at this hour in Jukkasjärvi. Like when is the sun rising in Jukkasjärvi? Yeah. So I went to Google and started typing like sunrise. Then like the query suggestion, like the query autocomplete for me in Google was sunrise Jukkasjärvi. So it was as if they were reading my mind. Like how would they know that that was what I was looking for? Like, I mean, how often do I search for sunrise Jukkasjärvi? I've never done that before.
And how do you think they actually knew that then?
Well, I mean, it's. I don't know, but it must be as like first you think they're reading your mind, but it must be like other people like also watching. Just assume like it's other people also watching the same thing. Yeah. Then like this like is real time. This is like a trending search right now. Because other people want to also like think, but it's like.
I mean, probably true. A lot of people just acted exactly as you did, and they just added that city, and that's why probably it has some kind of real-time kind of understanding of it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was impressive. It was mind-reading.
So but I think back of it, I guess it's like it's probably not that. Like, like it's not that hard. I guess like it's probably was a real time like trending search.
Real time search.
But the feeling of it, like to me as a user, was more like the first is just like this is like they're reading my mind. It's,
is the microphone on here or whatever?
Do you get scared by that? Are you a person that turns off cookies, for example, when you browse? Or
no, I'm not. I'm not that scared about that, to be honest.
Yeah.
No.
So but because a lot of people say that they prefer to turn off cookies, and they have the cookie law from GDPR, etc. And I've been working in advertisement, before I worked at Spotify as well, and to me actually I think since I know the purpose of it, at least from some point of view, is to really have good advertisement, which is actually something that helps me. I get annoyed if I get the wrong type of advertisement. Yeah. So in that sense, I think it's even better if they understand more who I am and can actually personalize more my both search results and ad results.
But this is sort of the endless conversation and argument we can have, like the benefit versus the cons and all that.
Yeah.
I think I was getting this, like this retargeting advertising when you go to something and then you don't buy it, like, and then you do something and then you like surf on the web and then you get this constant advertising for a thing you didn't buy.
Hunting you on
they're hunting you down. Yeah.
And I've had it also happen with my wife was getting me a birthday gift, I think, and then I kind of know beforehand because I started getting this ad, so it wasn't only like cookie based, I guess, but more like some IP tracking as well on you. So then it's the defeating the purpose.
What do you think about the search engine quality of different e-commerce sites in Sweden, perhaps? Then, what's your thinking about them?
Well, we talked about it like this. Often it's better to search for Google, and then because they're gonna have it better, and then do a deep link into the e-commerce side.
Yeah, but you mentioned the lactose-free kind of experience that you spoke about, in the beginning, and I guess the sad truth is that most Swedish companies, at least today, don't have the understanding of how to build a search engine. Or how would you rate, the standard quality of search engines for Swedish companies today are?
It's hard to say. Most of the time, they're fulfilling what you want to do. I think, this the lactose-free milk was lactose-free chocolate was. It was hard to find what I was looking for, but most of the time, otherwise, it's doable, but it's of course feels there's a lot of room for improvement. Especially I think there's the online grocery shopping, because that's often you go there and you're going to buy a ton of things. Some things are really nice. It remembers your past your past shopping. Yeah, so so you can repurchase that or just update it. So that's a convenient thing. But then when you're going to do this, I'm going to buy I have 20 things I'm going to buy, and you're going to go over them. That experience isn't that pleasant always.
Do you believe that, at least for Google, that they went, straight for search as the main tool to find information? And before Google, we have the Alta Vistas and also the old Yahoo kind of things. Do you remember Yahoo still back in the days? Like in 90s and beginning of 2000, where you had this kind of catalog and you browsed through different topics. And
I know it, but I don't think I never really used Yahoo.
You're too young. Yeah. It's just us too old for this kind of thing.
But I definitely used Alta Vista before Google. Yeah, for sure.
No, but it seems like the whole extremely simplistic search functionality that Google and other search engines provide is is starting to dominate more and more, rather than having to click through to find some things. And I guess the same in Spotify in some sense, right? Or would you say that there is a trend to see that, just using search to find what you want instead of having to navigate through to find what you want? Is that increasing in a sense?
Well, there's a home tab as well, of course. If you just want to, there's search and there's home and there's your library.
Yeah, your own my library kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that, I'm very honored to have you here, Anders Nyman, an old friend and colleague that also worked at Spotify when I did as well. And you have done so many amazing things as well, even before Spotify, with different websites and actually, web scraping, which is something I actually more or less did my PhD on, or started to do very early on as well.
I know, I was, you could help me with some things on the web scraping side.
Yeah, so many cool things. So with that, it's a true honor to have you here. And perhaps we can start with a quick introduction. How would you describe yourself? Who is Anders Nyman?
Yeah. First, I mean, it's my pleasure to be here. It's super fun to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, I'm a father of three, married, living in Huddinge. So I I grew up in Helsingborg, but then I think my professional side, I'm an engineering manager at Spotify, and I've been at Spotify for soon 10 years. I think that's like the most I guess the most relevant identity for this talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But you did a number of things before you joined Spotify, right?
Yeah, definitely. So So something I was thinking of, like, since this, like, I didn't know if we talked about it beforehand or if you know, but so I did my master thesis on building a expert system.
Right.
So
that's like, super interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start there.
Yeah, please elaborate. What did you do then?
So I was that was at Cisco in Santa Clara. So it was like we were doing it part of coursework, and then like that I got extended into an internship. So we did like a master thesis, myself and a friend.
Yeah.
Is this UC Santa Cruz?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So I did. I studied in Lund, and I did like a 1-year exchange in Santa Cruz, and then.
What year is this? 2006.
Oh. And then in 2007, did a master thesis at Cisco, together with like another friend who studied industrial engineering. So we had we did that together first, as some coursework, and then like it got extended into internship, and then we did it like for a master thesis. And then what we did then was like building an expert system for more it was like targeting like to more like the support organization. So we were getting like a lot of customer issues like around like misconfiguration of routers. So it was like about like trying to detect like the automatic detection of like issues in router configuration. So it's more like the expert system was like defining rules on or constraints like on the router configuration, and then like when they come on in a new like misconfiguration, if it's like common patterns, like they would like quickly identifying like this is this cause. To remove some of this like the easier things to
and perhaps we should also define what is really an expert system and how does it compare to like traditional AI systems today, perhaps.
Yeah, it's that's a good question. And I don't know if I'm the expert because I didn't really know about expert systems when we did this work. But I guess that's more like this like thinking is in like codifying like some experts' knowledge like of building maybe more heuristic rules on to quantify someone's knowledge.
Right. And how would you? Okay, if I phrase it like this: if you were to redo the system that you built then, the expert system, would you use some kind of different technology today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, to be honest, I think it's like the setup wasn't that bad because it was more like they had this like very specific like issues coming in. So it was more like how do you then like
match?
Yeah, so when they like, say that you have this like the support personnel like the customer support like looking at it and identifying that this is a problem, like how do you then like codify that issue? So I don't know like if like how much need. Like, is there how much need there is to generalize like between different type of issues? If it's only about this, like there is this super common issue like in router configuration files, we can then make like a script by like codifying like that knowledge of the human experts like to know that this is the problem. Then every time there comes in a new router configuration file that has a problem, if you then have that script and you run it over it and see, it's this, it's the same problem again. I mean that feels like it should be able to solve it. But it's a good question. I haven't really thought of it, to be honest.
Okay, so if we think that system would scale up to 10x or 100x, at some point, to manually encode the rules would be a bit painful, right? Yeah.
No, of course. I mean, if you have more like if you could learn the rules automatically, I mean, that's of course like it's super interesting. If you can, more like these are misconfigured router configuration files, and then like without needing any knowledge about it, like it's more like it's like it's like has some mistake in them. If you then can automatically like detect that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, at least some people define expert systems as these kind of hard-coded rules that you manually program, and more like symbolic kind of AI rule or logic-based systems that people believed a lot in the 80s and perhaps 90s as well. but then really didn't like scale in some way for more complicated solutions at least. Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, definitely.
But isn't it a little bit like horses for courses? Like in some concrete use cases, in some areas, it has its usefulness, but of course it doesn't scale in journalism and complexity. Then, it's too much coding.
I think the simple answer is that Occam's razor rules. The simplest solution that works is the best one.
Yeah.
So if it works to manually encode something, awesome, that's great. Then we should simply do that, right?
Yeah. And it's good. I mean, it's a good as a start as well to have like this, and then maybe you can improve on it later on. But I mean, having something that's like maybe starting with the heuristic that you manually encode, like, I mean, that's not a bad way to start.
Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. And what happened after the master thesis?
So then I moved back to Sweden, finished my studies, and then I started working at the Swedish Space Corporation. So moving to Stockholm. That's when I moved here.
That sounds really super.
A Swedish Space Corporation sounds Avenger stuff. So what is it?
So it's this. Do you know S-Range?
I know it, but I know the name, but what is it? I don't really know.
So it's this like. I guess like it's called like satellite base, or what do you call it? But I mean, it's like has a satellite communication, but it's also like a rocket. They launch rockets and.
This is what I mean with Avengers. It's a cool site, right?
Yeah.
That's where you want to be. That's your HQ.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, so S-Range is part of the Swedish Space Corporation, and but that's like more the satellite operations, and it's like the rocket and sounding rockets, I think is the name, and then like the balloon experiments. But then you also have like more development arm sitting in Solna at the time. So that's what I joined. So more like satellite development.
And what did you do? Developing what kind of satellite software?
So, it was like a lot of different things. Like it's part of like it's the European Space Agency, and then there's like so it's like a lot of the work you do is like coming from these European Space Agency projects.
Right.
But then I mean, what I worked on a lot was also like more a Swedish satellite called Prisma.
Yeah. I know Prisma. Yeah. Wasn't that one of the first satellites we sent up with TV3 and all that? Is that Prisma satellites?
Maybe there's I think there's two satellites. I think there's a different one as well. Because this is not, I don't know if the other one is that one, but because it's not a... this is more like a scientific mission. It's not like a telecommunications
Not a telecommunications satellite.
Yeah. So I worked on that one. I worked on a telecommunications satellite. I worked on like some more simulation software, like a few different things. But I joined that as an embedded systems developer.
And what specifically were your use cases or your fields that you were coding on?
So when I joined for building more. Like we were going to build like the onboard software for new satellite. But then that mission got cancelled, so that's when I moved over to this to Prisma, and that was then in the QA phase. Like so, basically all the development was done. So then I was doing a lot of quality assurance of new, manually quality assurance of like new versions, and then also like then doing some patches during the launch, and also more like the control phase.
Even when it was launched and actually control phase, does that mean when it's up in the air as well, working with it?
So we had like a mission control center in Solna as well. It's like we have this like around the clock operations. Yeah.
Nice. And how would you differentiate like normal software engineering versus like this kind of embedded rocket software engineering like constraints that you have?
Yeah,
I remember the old like moon landing Apollo rocket discussions where they have super restricted memory constraints and CPU constraints. How would you describe it at that time when you were working with it? How much like computing power did you actually have and memory requirements?
Yeah, it's I don't really remember. It's so long time ago. But it was, of course, like it was very limited. It was like you had to be like certified space hardened hardware. So like, I mean, that was very limited. I mean, otherwise, like, I mean, I think the big difference was also like this, like there wasn't, like we were doing this like manually scheduling of processes. There wasn't like any, like no preemption, what it's called, like hard real-time systems without like preemption. Yeah.
so no multi-threading or that kind of functionality at all. So everything is single-threaded in that way.
Yeah.
And I guess it's C or C++ kind of programming, or was it? What kind of language did you use?
Well, it's quite interesting because it was like it was C, but then it was a lot of MATLAB Simulink on top of it. Yeah.
On top of it. And what were you using the MATLAB stuff for? Statistical stuff or?
No, so there's something called Simulink, like MATLAB Simulink. That is like a more automatic control. So a lot of it was like, it was very like this, like this. Like I think the goal of Prisma was like to do almost everything in MATLAB Simulink. So like this, like the low level C was like as thin as possible, like more in the driver stuff, and like, but then everything else was done in MATLAB Simulink. So all this. So
the scientific jobs, collect things and whatever, that was Simulink stuff.
But also this like unfolding of the solar arrays.
Even this.
Like this, like how do you like more like if you think of it like a procedure, like it's like you're waiting this long, then you're gonna unfold, then you're gonna turn this way, then you're gonna unfold more. Like,
so the in quotation mark, the workflow even of the satellite up in the air.
Yeah, exactly. So it was heavy focus on that MATLAB Simulink, and then like you were generating. So like what happened then? I don't remember if this was for Prisma. Maybe that was for like this, like the next one, the EOS, the telco satellite. But then a lot of the focus on this, like also like the quality assurance, was this like the quality assurance of the so you generated C code from MATLAB Simulink, but then there was this like the ESA requirements on like on the C level, like so it was like there was like this specific requirements on what you could do, like some like maybe like hard linting rules you could say.
Right.
But then those had then to be observed on the generated C code, which was kind of like this like because you didn't write it yourself, you didn't need to think about like so that. Like the code you generated from Simulink would be adhering to these requirements on the C code. Yeah.
Was this like, I guess it wasn't traditional like Intel processors or x86 kind of instruction sets, or was it?
No, it was some FPGA, like emulating some other like other processor. Like, so it was like
Really?
some strange, kind of strange setup.
So special compilers as well, and you had to therefore use some special version or processing of C language to be able to do that?
Nah, it wasn't any. I think it was the GCC. I don't think there was any.
Really? Okay, interesting. Cool stuff. It's fun to do this kind of hard code engineering, core engineering.
Yeah, you think so?
I think so.
And we are debating our listeners or our viewers who is in the geeky side and who is like tuning out when it gets too geeky.
Oh yeah.
And every time we've been super geeky. This was a good episode, is Anders. And I said, I think it was pretty good. I followed half, but but it's interesting. I think I have a hypothesis. I think one way to learn more about data and AI, if you're sort of data literate, is actually to try to follow, even in conversations you can't follow, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you pick up snippets and pieces, and it's a little bit like learning any language, right? I can't follow every single word, but I can follow the general idea, and then you add words and words and words. What do you think as a way to sort of get more data literate?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like tag along is, I guess, a good way to learn as well. And I would say, this was my first job after university, this like the Swedish Space Corporation. So I wasn't an expert I'm taking like maybe one course on embedded systems development. So it's like, it's not like, it was a long time I worked there as well, so I don't remember everything. I think as like in hindsight, I think it was like super cool to get this experience to join that like straight out of university and like tag along with this like many other like amazing people that work there and learn from them.
Your learning curve must have been quite steep, considering the type of people that you were surrounded with.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you also started another like side business, right? During the time in the Space Corporation, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What was that?
So it's a web scraping service. It's called namehyresbevakning.se.
And it's still alive, right?
It's still alive, yeah.
It's still alive, yeah.
But you shouldn't, like, it's very, I haven't done any front-end changes to it for I don't know how long. Like, it's my time is very, like, it's like quite limited. So it's like, there's plenty of room for improvements.
What's the use case?
So it started when I moved to Stockholm myself. So it was like finding an apartment. So what it is like it's scraping landlords like for apartments. So it's like, it set it up like more like myself moving to Stockholm, like trying to find an apartment, And then there are these landlords that have they don't like use the housing queue. That more like they publish, like some of them do it like first come first serve, some do like more a lottery of like the people applying in the first 24 hours. Like there's a few different setups, and some just like say like we're gonna pick someone. So it's like very non-transparent like how to do it. So it's like, but it's like anyways like there's multiple ones that have like their own housing queues as well. So it's more like this like my focus then was like on these ones that didn't have a housing queue, like more that had is like first come first serve, or like the lottery. Like to know every time like an apartment came out from one of those, and then like applying for it myself in order to try to get the apartment. And then like what I then did, like the next step was then like making that into service. Like so that is like this hyresbevakning.
But I love this. Like when the engineers have a problem, you basically solve it. Code the problem. Sometimes I get very jealous. I get very jealous when you get stuck with this. How the hell should I search in all these different sites? Well, I code it. I love it. But I'm really jealous.
I mean, it's a serious problem as well. I mean, even for Sweden has a hard time to attract talents from abroad, especially. And one of the main reasons is that, it could also be monetary and salary, but one of the biggest reasons perhaps is the difficulty in finding apartments in Stockholm and in other big cities in Sweden. And you need services like this to do that, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think it's like, the unfortunate fact, of course, is like that this doesn't, I mean, if it's only like a very limited number of apartments being published on like this first come first served or like the lottery, I mean, it doesn't solve like the majority of the cases. No. But I think it's also like nice. It's like the aggregation, like the concept of aggregating all these different sites into one place. So one feed of it, like instead of having, because I mean, one thing is like if you're like, who knows that you could be looking at Wallenstam and like can get their apartments that are like that they don't have their own housing queue, but when they have new projects, they like take like 50% of their apartments and like give them out to people like following their queue.
But how has that market changed over the years? You had it for like 15 years now, or 13 years or something?
It's something like that. I mean, I started when I moved to Stockholm, so like that was 2008. But I didn't launch I launched maybe 2009, I think, like the service.
But I'm thinking more. They have a lot of private landlords in Stockholm as well, and it's hard to find information about the apartments they actually put up for rent. And this is where just collecting that to a central place as you did is really useful. But you would hope that at least during the years that improves and the information from these kind of landlords is collected somewhere. Would you say that has happened, or how has the market changed, so to speak?
Well, I think there's like there's been more landlords have joined like the central housing queue.
Okay.
But then I mean
in Stockholm, for example.
Yeah. Yes. So I mean that's better. I mean, of course, like having this like from the customer point of view, like having everything in one place is ideal.
Yeah.
And I think there's been also some. I mean, so Malmö was really bad. Or good from my perspective, maybe from a business perspective, because they didn't have a central like housing queue, right. But they created that like years ago now. So like I mean, they have this like Boplats Syd that is like similar to this like the Stockholm one.
It's slowly improving at least, right?
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, it's like as long as you have this like the regulation, it's not. I mean, it's still going to be hard to find. So even if you like put them all in one place, it's still going to be hard to find an apartment. So I mean, from that side of point of view, I don't know if it's improving like for the person looking for an apartment.
So I guess if someone is still having trouble or interested in finding an apartment in Stockholm or some other big city in Sweden, they should go to hyresbevakning.se, right?
They should, yes.
And you can basically sign up and subscribe to some information about that, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's right. So you sign up and then you get like it's email based right now, and you get like emails when it's whenever something's available. I would say like mainly like, so I mean how it's evolved as well. I would say like it's fewer. It's like, so it's a bit sad, but it's like fewer landlords now. I don't know if it's sad, but I think this like having this like the side thing for people that are very active, like with the lottery. I think this like first come first served is not a good setup. But I mean having the lottery, I think the 24-hour lottery, I think that as like a separate housing queue, I think it's kind of like it's nice because like it gives some at least like some chance for people outside to get it. But like fewer landlords use that. Yeah. It's more that have moved back to only doing the housing queue.
I think that the rental market in Stockholm is absurd. I mean, some people are in queue for like 10 years, and I mean it's not a functioning market, right? It's absurd.
I lived in Sydney, and it's easier to find a house and an apartment in Manly. You can, and actually it's all about what you're willing to pay, and then you sort it out. And here you can't really sort it out.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it's still the case, but I mean, before at least when it's like newly built apartments, like they are quite expensive. So then also, I mean, of course, then it's like it's going to be expensive, but like that has been the shot of getting like a first-time contract, like historically at least.
Do you have any search functionality in hyresbevakning.se?
I used to have, but it didn't perform very well. So I was doing like so maybe back to this like the linear track of my. So I was doing I was working at Swedish Space Corporation, and I took like half a year off when I was studying like business administration, and during that like half year I was like I did quite a lot of work on hyresbevakning, and I was like then I had like more research functionality, but then no one used it, and I know if I was, I mean, in hindsight, or I mean, if you wanted to go for it, you should have like started like hiring some people with front end skills, and it would be much nicer experience for for the user.
And no recommender systems yet either in hyresbevakning.se or?
No, but I have like some ML things I wanted to do with it. Like for instance, like, or I think like there are two things like primarily I've thought of.
Yeah.
Like in the first one is like more to do better location extraction. So that's for is like the subletting sites like Blocket, but even also what is called like Bostad Direkt that have like these like because sometimes there like people don't fill in like the address properly, so they're gonna give like some more like it's like 10 minutes walk to the right when you exit the subway stop, stuff like that. And if you could then from that like have a better location information, I think that would be useful because you can like when you sign up you like specify like what where you're interested in. And then the second one is more having like more prediction of like since like it's so housing queue based, I think it's like would be nice to have like a predicting like queue time. So when you have a new apartment, then like you're gonna predict like how long time would you need to have in a queue to be able to get this one. Because then you could have more like a long term. Say that you're in the housing queue and you have like 10 years in the housing queue, and then like you don't want to get all the apartments, but you want to get. I only want to get apartments in Södermalm that I'm interested that I could potentially be
100 years.
Yeah, maybe.
Prediction.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, maybe it's not. It's like it's an interesting question, but maybe it's not like very useful as a user feature.
Oh, it's cool.
I think it's encouraging that these kind of services obviously has a great user value, but still there isn't like a big corporation fixing these kind of solutions. Which I mean, like
there's so much room for startups that if you really nail down the problem you're wanting to solve, and you go out and understand the data and the algorithms behind it, it's still doable in many areas. I think that's the bottom line.
And if you do it like you did, Anders, which basically is, I had a problem myself and I didn't find a solution, so I built one. I mean, I think that's a really good starting point, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, of course.
For people that are interested in starting a startup themselves?
Yeah, definitely. And I think just from learning as well, because I think it's like I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but I mean, it's also, so I didn't know Python. So when I did it, I was also like, I wanted to learn Python. So I did it in Python. Right. I'm hosting it on like GCP, like App Engine, like super early, which was like, I mean, because I also wanted to try it out, and it's like hoping for like a no ops experience.
So you had a double agenda. You did something useful, but it was also a learning project for you in a sense.
Yes.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then at some point you got in contact with Spotify somehow. How did that happen?
So it was, it was me applying. I was
okay, cool.
So it was like, I took this like the half year off from Space Corporation. So as I mentioned, like when I joined like this, like the project that I was joining for got canceled. Then we were working on Prisma. Like Prisma got launched. Like then it was like, so it wasn't like that much work around. Like and then they like they sold like the satellite division was sold like to a German company. Which I think, like, I think it was a good thing. So, I'm not complaining, but it was a lot of things changing. A lot of people left. There weren't like a lot of business. Like it was kind of like a negative atmosphere. So I felt like it's like I wanted to do something else.
Did you know anything about Spotify at that time, or how come you actually applied there?
I know it as a user, like from using the service.
Right. Okay.
And I thought, it felt like a nice place, like a cool place to work on. Like it's a kind of unique service. I didn't know much about like how it was like internally at Spotify, but it felt like from the outside like an interesting place.
And at that time, what year was this approximately? This was in
2011.
And how big was Spotify at that time?
I think it was like about around 400 people when I joined.
Right.
Yeah.
So before I started, for sure. Yeah, cool. And what was your first expressions, when you started working there? Can you speak a bit what you started working with and your first impressions when you did that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know what the first, I was a bit or impressed, or like almost
starstruck.
And you get this also the imposter syndrome, like everyone's so good, like what am I doing here? Like how did I get hired? Like that sort of thing. But at the same time, like a nice experience as well, like to feel like you're working with like amazing people that you're gonna learn a ton from. So that's like very, very cool.
What was your first title or type of role that you had?
So when I applied for, I think it was called like business intelligence developer. That's what I applied for.
Yeah.
And I think when I joined, I think it was called analytics engineer, if I remember correctly.
Right.
You already upgraded in the process from applying to joining. I like that.
Maybe, yeah.
I like analytics better than BI as a title.
But what I did like when we joined, it was like more this like central team, like working with like analytics. Like so it was like, but it was like very broad. It was like owning, like building the like maintaining a Hadoop cluster.
Right.
Like doing data pipelining, like building like A/B testing tooling.
So it's quite broad from the pipelines all the way to the report layers, sort of thing. Or
it was like all of that like was one team, including like product insights, and everything really.
And were you guys doing the reporting for all these sort of getting the right the stream should go, how much should go to the artist? That is quite complex reporting to follow up. Yeah,
so that's like one of the first things I did when I joined. Yeah. Like I was working on that, and then I also I think like one of the very first things was also like we were doing this. There was a reporting. Then we're doing this like evaluation of scheduling systems, and we're like we built like had this like Luigi thing for like more like task orchestration, and we were like evaluating. I think like Uzi is this like the Hadoop. It's like we were doing some evaluation of that. So that's also something I worked on, and then like we did this migration from Elastic MapReduce back to on-prem. So those are the three things I remember. Like that happened just when I joined.
And we actually spoke a bit to Henrik Lööf, who was here last week as well, that worked at Spotify as well early on. Was he starting before you or after you? Do you remember?
I don't know. Because we didn't work together like in the beginning. So, I don't know. But I started, at that time. I don't know exactly when he...
But wasn't it the case that we actually in Spotify first had Amazon as a cloud provider and then moved on-prem? Or did we have both at the same time? Or do you remember how it started?
Well, so I think, I wasn't there when this happened, so I'm hoping I get it correct. Yeah. Otherwise, you need to get then another Spotify to correct me. But as it's been told, and I don't know, but the first one was just like running on the people's laptops, or computers. So it's was this they're running MapReduce on everyone's computer. Right. And then after that, they moved to this like an internal computer, or a stack of like an on-prem Hadoop setting. And then after that, they moved to Elastic MapReduce, Amazon. Okay, and then when I joined, we were just deciding to moving back.
So so at some point here, I think someone has mentioned the famous server in the closet. Is that which one is that? Do you remember that?
So that is it's not the closet, it's the football room, I think. Okay. So it's this is the second one. After first the computer, then there's the one in the football room, and then I probably they went then to some more proper data center, I guess. But it is all before my time, so I wasn't there for that. But when I joined, it was Elastic MapReduce on Amazon Cloud. Okay. And then when I joined, so then in 2011, or I guess 2012, beginning 2012, we moved back from Elastic MapReduce to on-prem.
And what kind of cluster did they use then? It was a classical Hadoop clusters at that time, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it was even before Yarn, if I remember correctly. It was this kind of classical MapReduce job we wrote in Python, partly, I guess, in Luigi, but also directly in Java, right? Or what kind of tooling did you start working with to actually start using the on-prem Hadoop cluster?
Yeah, I mean, it was primarily this like the Python MapReduce, but it's like this like the streaming MapReduce. So you could like do it in any language really, but it's like we like it was implemented like this like the Luigi like for doing the Python MapReduce.
I heard about Luigi a lot, and especially from Spotify, it seems like a very important piece of the puzzle. What is Luigi?
So it's so it's kind of like two things, which gets so it's, one thing is like the Python MapReduce. It's like you can do like there's this like the streaming MapReduce where you write like the MapReduce jobs. So that's one thing. Like you can then express like the MapReduce, like you write it like in Python. So you write the mapper and you write a reducer function, and then you have a job. So that's like one thing. And then another one is more like a job orchestration. So then you have like this, like you have multiple jobs. Like multiple like jobs, and each job has like a mapper phase and a reducer phase, and then you can like bundle them together, like to have like the dependency. And then like so those are kind of like two different things. But I guess like the reason why they're together is if you have this like the Python MapReduce, you have like the mapper and the reducer. But then if you want to do something more complex, then you're gonna need to have like multiple steps of like a mapping phase, reducing phase, and another mapping phase, and another reducing phase. And at that time, like the way you express that would then be like you have those as like different jobs with an intermediary storage on HDFS, and then like you need to then like describe the dependency between those two jobs.
Yeah, so Luigi at this point in time becomes critical to orchestrate pipelines of a little bit more complexity.
That's right. But I think like then like what's a bit like confusing is then like, I mean, so right now, like, I mean, you don't do Python MapReduce, but you still want to have this like dependency of different jobs. So you can still use like Luigi for that. So I think I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing that no one like is using Luigi for Python MapReduce anymore.
I mean, like today,
but it still has this.
I mean, like to most people, I guess they would see Luigi as the orchestrator type technology.
Exactly.
But it's interesting because when you started, it was actually two key parts to it.
Yeah, and I think and you didn't really see it as two different parts. It's like, but it's, I mean, it was two different parts. But I mean, I didn't think about it. I thought it was like this is the way. Yeah, this is the way we do it for doing MapReduce. Yeah.
Cool. Well, you started working as a data engineer, we guess we can call it.
Yeah.
And you've been there for a long time. How would you say the data engineering role has evolved over the years?
Good question.
Because it started to be like a business intelligence engineer, analytics engineer, as you mentioned. Would you say the what you meant at that in the beginning with data engineer has changed over the times, so it means something else today? Or
so I think it's like when you, as I mentioned, like when you joined, it was kind of like it was one team. So then it was kind of like what you did was kind of like not super. I mean, it's like not super defined because more you were an engineer, but like what did that include? Like, it could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think then like what has happened now is more like either like in data engineering, you could either mean like someone like or meaning like the person building like the infrastructure for others to be productive with data. So I mean that's like I think that's that's more like the data infrastructure side, but I think it's called like probably still called like data engineer, maybe also job description. But then it could also be more like more in the feature team, like you're using data and you're building like data sets and think about like the schema evolution like of your data and that sort of things. It's kind of like
and I think some people don't understand what you mean with central teams versus feature teams, etc. What do you mean with that?
So I mean with the feature team, I mean for instance search. Like so you have like a user facing. Like I mean it maybe doesn't need to be user facing, but like more like a feature in the app. So I think like the user facing ones are easy, of course. It's like easy to describe. So like search is a feature, and then like the infra team is more like then if you're gonna have multiple teams that's gonna do data engineering at Spotify, like it's nice to have then a team that's gonna build tooling for those people to be productive in their data engineering tasks, and that's more like then what I meant with this like the infrastructure team.
So we have this kind of central versus going more embedded into feature teams or product teams, and it's been I think popular theme or question that we had over a number of discussions in the past, and I guess you can. I guess my question should be, how centralized should the data engineering work be? Should it be a central team, like an infrastructure team? Should it be that every feature team have their own data engineers? What do you think the right setup should be?
I think of course it's going to depend on how big your company is. I mean, I don't think there's like one size fits all.
Right.
So when I joined, like it was like everything was one central team, and then it was split in two. So it was like one that was more like was one that was analytics, and there was one that was data infrastructure. So it was like two teams.
Yeah.
And then you had, so then it was also like a mapping in analytics more like to the different feature teams, where it's like like you had different parts, like you served different parts of the company from analytics. But I would say now, I mean, in the setting now, like search is more like a feature team, and I mean, it makes sense for search to have its own data engineers.
Right.
Like, I mean, that shouldn't be centralized. Not that, I don't think that makes any sense.
I mean, it's good because that's what I've been trying to claim, that's the proper way to do it. And I'm glad to say that hear that you agree. But at least when you start out, you need to have at least some kind of centralized team that can build up some kind of critical mass of competence around the area. But as you scale, you start to spill over, and you have like a hybrid approach where you have a centralized team that provide like the template kind of core competence and support. But you also have competence inside like product teams and feature teams, right?
But I really think it has all to do about scale and actually the variety of type of use cases you're working on. So if I take the example of Scania, where I'm right now, I mean, like they started, of course, when they built the on-prem data lake in one central team, and it was the sort of central IT in order to get control and get some sort of center of excellence understanding, right? But of course, you can realize it's completely impossible to understand from a content perspective the different domains in Scania, right? From autonomous vehicles to connectivity to whatever you need in the manufacturing side to retail and all that. So here we have that becomes a real problem and a bottleneck because it doesn't fly, right? So Scania now going into sort of generation 2 and 3 of their big data stuff, it truly becomes more what we are describing here of a central infra team serving domain teams. We would call it domain teams in Scania. Okay. So, and within the domain team, you could argue feature or service or whatever. So I work a lot with the bank side. Well, we need our engineering team to build our whatever data pipelines we need. But we are doing it very, very tightly with the central teams. We're trying to build scaffoldings and templates and reuse it. And we don't want to lit up the sort of pipeline. We want to fill it with content, sort of thing. I think that's, I don't know. It becomes, to me, Vattenfall and then Scania, where the value chains are very, very different, right? It's different companies in the same company almost. I don't see a central team that can do it the whole way. But of course, you need to start somewhere. Yeah. And of course, if I flip it, if you have all the domain teams but no central team to set some sort of standards and data catalog and CI/CD, I think that would be a mess too. So I really think the hybrid is the way to go.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I think also this with the size, because if you say you go directly for having like this, like the data engineers in the feature teams, and it's only like one data engineer, then you're going to feel lonely. So
no critical mass.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I think that's.
I don't get the critical mass and can't really evolve and do any more of the internal tooling, I guess.
But I mean, definitely right now, I mean, at the scale of Spotify is today, I mean, it's like then having the domain, I mean, in the feature teams or domain teams, then like having more like the data engineers there and like the ML engineers, like that makes total sense.
But I think this is a very important follow-on question now, because as you are scaling now with more teams, and you're trying to keep a computational standard or design pattern standards and reuse what the infra team has built. So how do you solve that in Spotify in terms of getting the knowledge sharing between the sort of feature teams and the central teams? So the feature teams can really go fast on their features, but not rebuilding stuff that actually is already existing somewhere else in Spotify. How do you solve that? What is the community, guilds, chapters, all the stuff, what's the going rate today, 2000?
No, but definitely, I mean, you have this like the knowledge sharing settings, of course.
Yeah.
And I would say, I mean, if you take this like the autonomous team concept as well, like then you could think of the team like being autonomous. Like, I mean, so they're going to go for like what makes sense for them. And then it's going to be more like, I mean, it's kind of like they're going to be a customer of the platform, or more the central teams. It's like they're again more going to be coming with like requests or like feature requests, I guess, to the platform team.
Yeah.
So that's also like, I mean, more. I mean, it's like. So
it's a little bit like the infra team needs to be customer oriented to build the type of features or toolings that is really helpful and useful. Otherwise, they don't have a case. Something like this. So it's not really a push; it's more like a pull. Would you say that?
Yeah, it goes both ways, because it's also probably going to be like a push on like this is like we need to migrate to this version. It's like you all need all the teams need to do this like migration now. And it's like that's like more a push than coming from the central team.
But to be a little bit nerdy on, I think this is difficult stuff. How to do knowledge sharing concretely in everyday life. So what is the mechanisms that you are using, or do you have sort of communities, or how have you organized that?
Yeah, it's I don't know if you have any but there's a lot of like internal conferences. There's like knowledge sharing sessions, the normal like there's a lot of like there's an active like blog where people like an engineering blog that people like write up things they're working on and sharing that with others in the company.
Yeah, but
I don't know. It doesn't feel like I'm answering your question.
No,
we don't have like a secret.
Because I'm really curious, because I'm contrasting sort of this sort of more. How should I put it? This is our policy. We have this governance body. We meet quite formally. I think this is a difference between an enterprise way of solving this. That we have our commercial data board. We have a data product owner forum, and we meet every month, and we have this agenda, right? This is one way of doing it. The other one is more, I would say, pool, community. We go here because we like it, because we learn, and which is maybe, I don't know. I don't see, one is more structured and one is more voluntary, but I don't know which one works best, to be honest. But so I was sort of exploring this field. This interests me a lot.
But it depends on also, what do you want to control from the central team? Because of course you could have some control like on what type of frameworks people use. Like, so it's like also, because to encourage like sharing and like people, like if they want to move teams, like it's going to be annoying if everyone team is doing like a completely different programming language and so then you can have a centralized like setting on like how you're going to do it. But I think then, probably not going to control centrally then. I think mainly it's going to be like this, the feature teams are going to be the domain expert in what they're doing. Yeah. It's like, it's not like someone centrally is going to come and say like, you should use this, like this is the way you should solve this problem. It's like, that's going to be happening from the feature teams.
I find this a very important area how to solve, and it's not so easy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the good strengths that Spotify has. It really tries to provide autonomy and ownership in the feature teams themselves. And also, although it can cause some mess, still having the freedom to actually do that, even though you have not perhaps support from the central team, I think is a very important thing to have. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's this like autonomy is great, and it makes it more fun. You feel like this, like you own your part of the of what it is. Like you're more in control of that.
Yeah, true. Cool. And we spoke a bit about moving back and forth from the cloud, and we went from Amazon to on-prem, and then you had a big transition into Google Cloud. Were you part of that in somehow, or in starting that work?
Not really in starting the work, but I was part of I would say, this is like one of these, like the central thing. If you have, you have the push and pull.
Yes.
If someone decides now, the company decides we're going to go to GCP, and then we're going to finish this by this deadline. Of course, then you're going to have then it's like a central team saying that's going to happen, and you need to finish by this. I can then look like who's done yet, like who isn't done, and I can make sure like people keep the schedule and keep the pace. But so what I was like, going back to the question, I was working then with more like some key data, like a more core data sets for the company. So we were more like affected, and like in the sense of like needing to like perform the GCP migration for our data. And then also like before that, I guess like we were a bit involved like more in like everyone was super keen to use BigQuery. I think maybe more that.
That was that the killer app that everybody, I can live with GCP as long as I get BigQuery.
Yeah, and I think we did so I think we started using BigQuery before before finishing full migration. So I mean, that was like certainly like a big improvement over like our previous setting.
What was the main reasons that they actually did go for the full GCP migration into Google Cloud? Was it BigQuery, or was it more things, or what was the main reasons you would say for moving from on-premise to Google Cloud?
Yeah, so there is like I don't know if you listen to it, but there is this like very nice like podcast like called Spotify Product Story.
Yeah.
So
Gustav Söderström.
Exactly.
Yes.
So they have like an episode like talking about the GCP migration. And I think, so I mean, what they bring up there, like it's also like this, I mean, like the aspects of like, what do you think is your core, like the core thing you're doing, like, or what are you going to be good at? And are you going to be good at like operating like huge data centers? It's like, or is that like where you want to invest your engineering resources as well? And if it's not, like, I mean, so I think that's this like a big reason for doing the cloud migration.
So it's a strategic choice where to put engineering investment.
Yes.
How deep infra versus feature or what we are good at.
Exactly. And then I think also like then besides that also like then a bet, and maybe that's more on this like the GCP reason, like it's more like a bet on the like the value added services, and that's where BigQuery comes in as an example. Like if this like or something that we would get from this that we're not having right now.
So I'm a bit eager, since I know a bit about how this works as well. I mean, it's hard to do a big shift, like from on-premise to Google Cloud, because you want to use, I guess, as much of the services that do exist on Google Cloud as possible, and avoid having to maintain and develop all of that yourself. But still, you can't switch everything directly, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a term that we use quite often here, which is called lift and shift. Basically saying that we just take the processes that we have and just shift it into cloud, but still it operates in the same way. And if I recall correctly, some of the Hadoop workings, for example, in the beginning was simply lifting it into the cloud and having virtual machines instead of using the proper Google services. Would you agree?
That's true, but I think this is like is a good example coming back to what we talked about. This like the central team versus the feature teams, because I mean the central team says like now we're going to move to GCP. This is deadline. Like everyone needs to be done. Like otherwise, like there's no like alternative. Like you need to be done. But then it's more up to the feature teams. Like then how do they want to do the migration? So I think like there's two different like. I mean of course it's like huge migration of this like all the services. Yeah. Like how are we going to move this like the on-prem services like over to the Google Cloud? Yeah. I think that's like a more challenging migration. But I wasn't part of that. I was doing more the data migration. And I think like, so if you look only at the data migration, like, I mean, I think you can either do this, like you have our existing jobs, like, and you can then like, you can...
and jobs, for people who don't know, I mean, we have like 10,000 pipelines running every day or something, or?
I don't know the exact figure.
That's a lot of them.
But it's a lot of jobs, yeah. So I mean, that's more like producing, like doing some data processing, like, and then producing like an output. So I mean, you could, but then like on the migrations, you can either like say, like, I mean, I have my, like what framework am I using now on Hadoop? And then I'm just going to keep the same thing. And then there's like this tooling called Dataproc that's like basically running Hadoop on Google Cloud. Yeah. So you could then like set up Dataproc and then like keep running the exact same thing you had before, but now running it on Google Cloud.
That would be the closest to lift and shift. I mean, like not really maximizing the infra that you're basically... If we did it stupid before, we're going to do it stupid now. But so the main point is to get from A to B, not really adding value.
Yeah. So let me go back as like one step. So I mean, of course, like to do that, you also need the data on Google Cloud. So I mean, of course, like the first thing is like here you have the data on-prem Hadoop HDFS. Then you also want to have it on Google Cloud, so you can then move. And I think that so I mean, what was done then was more like a replication setting where like you moved all the data. Like if you start with like the upstream logs, like like moving them over, so you have them both like mirrored. So you have them both on HDFS and you have them on GCP. And then
so
like
upstream logs, basically data coming in from the front-end services or the apps that people are using when playing.
Yeah, exactly.
And also back-end services and all these kind of logs you want to have both on-prem and in the cloud.
Exactly.
So you fork them to do the same, to be the same in two places for a while.
That's right. So you think, I mean, you have all these like these jobs again, or the pipelines, or what you want to call them. like, I mean, they're taking some data and they're producing some data.
Yeah.
So like at the very top of that is this like the raw data that's not actually produced by pipeline, it's produced by events emitted from the client, or it's like maybe a database dump or something.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you start with those ones and you move them over, so you have them replicated, so you have them both on HDFS and you have them on GCP. I mean, then you have unlocked the first layer of migration. So then everyone in that first layer can then do like their parallel migration. Then of course you could then also like you could also replicate the output of their things like over to GCP, because then you have also unlocked like this the second layer. So you could like if you replicate everything, you have basically unlocked everyone to do their own their own migration. So like, so then you can do it more like team by team can do the migration.
So this was a quite conscious strategy how to get, if I get that layer over first, then we can work on the next layer, and then we can work on the next layer. And at some point, now we can be more flexible just in time when the different feature teams can move. Something like this.
Exactly. And then coming back to this like the lift and shift, like more this like the data proc. So it's like, again, like you have this like central initiative to move to Google Cloud. But then then it's more like up to the teams then to decide like how do you want to do it? Like do they want to use like keep running their like processing framework and do data proc, or do they want to like re-implement their like all of their data pipeline and processing and like in the new framework then on data flow?
And would you say this was sort of opportunistic from the different teams to basically, well, this is a good timing for us. We actually want to use the new data flow. And for us, somehow we are too busy with other things. We just want to survive. So we will do it the old way. So a little bit opportunistic here. Which way when to fix it immediately or to do it lift and shift?
Definitely, I think so. And I think it's also like very much dependent on like what infrastructure or what data processing framework were you using on Google on Hadoop. Yeah. So it's like so in our case, I think that was super nice because we were using Scalding on-prem, and then we have so on top of Dataflow, or actually on top of Google Apache Beam, we have this like framework called Shio. That's like a more data processing framework in Scala.
And also then, developed in-house, you should say, right?
That's right. Developed in-house. It's great. It's used by a lot of companies. It's amazing.
And a shout out to the person who created it as well, perhaps, if you remember the name.
Neville.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So basically, for you basically could get something that you really wanted, or did you? Was that you saw something? This is perfect for us.
I think that was one thing, but it was more like it was extremely similar to Scalding, like on the. Like the framework.
So it was efficient, not so much rebuild or something like this.
Yes, exactly. So I mean, we did a rebuild, but that was like more it was kind of like you could like copy paste your code and like change some things and it was done. Versus then if you were on Crunch, like this, like the Java framework used by a lot of teams, like then if you then wanted to do like move to, like I mean, it wasn't like I mean, you could either then like do this like the data proc and run like your Crunch jobs on GCP. But if you wanted to do this like the Shio migration, like it would be much more cumbersome, like rewrite of all your jobs. I mean, we also had to rewrite, but it was more like the rewrite was easy because like it was very similar. Like both of it was in Scala as well.
I think some people that are a bit confused now by all the terms we have been using. We have been using terms like Scalding, Crunch, Dataflow,
Scala.
We haven't. Yeah, Scala is a programming language, but we haven't mentioned Spark actually. And I guess I was a big proponent, but then it never really caught on in
so what is Scalding?
Right?
What is Let's start with that one.
Yeah,
Scalding?
Yeah, if we just start to speak a bit about the differences between perhaps Crunch is not really well known. I don't think for a lot of people, and nor is Scalding, I would argue. Or
I think I mean I don't think like Scalding was like used by a lot of, or at least like Twitter was like heavily using, but I don't think Crunch was. I don't know if that was like much used outside of.
But it was a Java-based tool, right?
It was, yes. So it's like I mean, I think like, I don't know how interesting it is like to talk about all of this, but I think like the interesting conceptual level is more like we used to be on Python MapReduce, and that's like as we mentioned, like it's very low level. Like it's like you write a mapper, you write a reducer, and then you have to like put many of these things together. So I mean, it's not very nice. Like you want a more. Like,
you're very low now.
Yes, so you want to have like a better expressivity, and then if you want to do it on a SQL level, that was Hive, and then if you want to do it like more in a programming language, I can have more like better expressivity. So it's like more you do a group by. You don't do that. Like you don't like yourself write the group by in MapReduce. You don't write the join in MapReduce. Like it's more you do a join in the framework. And that's what you get from this, like from Crunch, and what you get from Scalding and from Shio.
And then we have the data flow part as well. If we were to describe that shortly, how would you describe data flow?
I would just call it like data processing as a service.
Yeah, I mean, because I think some people think like data flow. Oh, it's a data flow, but it's actually a named service developed by Google, available on Google Cloud. That is basically a managed data and big data processing tool, right?
That's right.
So it's a complement. It's an alternative to Scalding, Crunch, Spark, etc. But they manage all the machines, etc., and they manage the jobs as well.
That's right.
And they, yeah.
And the big difference is like, I mean, when you were on-prem and you run Scalding, like maybe you only run Scalding, but someone needs to maintain the Hadoop cluster.
Right.
So that's like if you then do the migration to GCP and you do this, like you run Dataproc, then you're both like, then one thing is like you're running Dataproc. So you're basically like operating your own Hadoop cluster for your team. Plus still have your code done in Scalding. But then if you do the migration to Shio, like then it's like you can think of like data flow as just more providing like that's like removing this like the Hadoop layer. So it's like more, it's just the data processing as a service. So you don't need to think of like you don't have a Hadoop cluster anymore.
And Shio as basically is how would you call it, a wrapper around data flow as well, or how would you describe it?
It's like on top of Apache Beam.
Yeah, but Beam is on top of data flow then as well, right?
I mean, you can run.
You can run Spark and Flink as well.
Yeah.
You're opening a bit Pandora's box here. I think the Apache Beam standardization that Google did was a really smart thing from a Google point of view.
Yeah, but I mean, you're right. I mean, we're using it for. I mean, primarily it's like. At Spotify, it's just like Shio, and then you run it on Dataflow. I mean, that's.
Yeah. No, anyway, I mean, Google does a lot of very strategic and smart moves sometimes, and I think this is one of the smarter ones they've done, where they created Apache Beams, which basically is 100% compatible with Dataflow, and perhaps 70% compatible with Spark, and Flink 60%. I don't know. It's probably better today, but it was a really smart thing where they say they want to really standardize things. And then you can choose what you want to use, but in reality you couldn't really, because you can't use all the functionality that Spark and Flink has that is not supported by Beam. Anyway, it's just my opinion.
So
I don't know too much.
They were smart in the sense that they made something that seemed very flexible and open and could do everything, but actually from their point, it steers the developers into
data flow.
The data flow tool that is their service.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how easy it is to use Shio outside of Dataflow. Or, I mean, that's the setting we use primarily. But I mean, for that, it's like it's really good.
Yeah.
My knowledge is very limited to GCP as well, because that's what I use for my own service and like for everything at Spotify. So I don't know like how well it compares with other offerings. But it's like.
But if we were to summarize now, like when we have now moved into GCP and we have now lived there for quite a while. What is the fundamental difference in your opinion on how we look at architecture today? I mean, like first of all, we were on-prem, and then we had to look at it in some ways because we had to do everything, right? And then you go into GCP, and now we have even evolved quite further, and we get to more and more abstraction layers. We have the Lambda in AWS. What's the equivalent in
Google Functions.
Google Functions and all that. So how is this, and how is the stack evolved, so to speak, in terms of how we use it or think about it? Any ideas or any thoughts that comes to mind when I ask that question?
I mean, I kind of already said it, but I think like this more like the involvement into like not like more as a service, like, or you don't want to like moving up. So like, I mean, you don't want to. You don't want to run Hadoop, or it's like you have your data on GCS, and then you want to like do a data processing job on top of it. Like that's like enabled by Dataflow.
Yeah, but this is, I think, is quite clear, right? So the first topic is, okay, we don't want to do the really low infra stuff. We want to do that as a service.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, like hint. Are we looking differently using containers, or when did Dockers and Kubernetes come into this mix? How did that change for the data pipeline guys, or is that on the side? Was that all that it wasn't there? If I go back,
no, that's right. But it's I don't know. I think this that's more on the service side, because I think you don't really need. We do containerize our jobs, like running, or like more like the packaging of like how you run the data flow job. You don't really need it. I think it's more for this like more on the backend service side, and like I mean having of course like you want to have like the right sizing and like auto scaling and yeah.
So the impact of these containers and all that has been on a slightly different part of the whole architectural stack, so to speak. Is that I'm trying?
I don't. What I mean is, I think it's like it's super important, and but it's more on like in a different track. It's not like it's not like you do this move to data flow, and then the next step after that is the containerization. So, it's not like it's something like else on the side.
It solves another problem.
Yeah, but of course it's also like in a similar setting. Like it's like if you don't need to if you run Kubernetes, like maybe you don't need to think so much about yourself about like provisioning hardware and like how much capacity do I need. Like you can do that like on GKE and get like auto scaling for you and
we could continue this for a long time, I think. But let's perhaps move to a next topic as well. And,
we actually what do you do now? What are you working on right now? Can we ask that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm working on search right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, I joined Spotify as a data engineer. Basically, it wasn't like that wasn't titled, but I would say like that's what it would be called now. And then I worked. I was a PM for a short time. And then I've been an EM for a few years.
EM, you have to elaborate.
Engineering manager.
Yes, and there are so many different terms here. We had like terms like chapter leads previously. We have product owners. We have tech leads. We have engineering managers. How would you describe what an engineering manager is?
So, I mean, primarily it's a people manager. Like you manage like a few like engineers. So it's kind of like self-describing.
Well, not actually. I mean, it sounds like it's engineering. It sounds like a tech lead also in some way, but it's not. It is like you manage engineers.
Yeah. So it's a people manager, but it's also like then more. So I mean, also this like the difference between a chapter lead. It's like more than focus on like one team. It's more focused on the delivery of that team, and I guess also like in some sense like the tech ownership like of that team, or like the.
But I think a lot of people are interested in understanding, how we organize people and what type of roles we have in Spotify. And I said we know, but
you did. I was noticing that.
Are you coming back on those?
But what I meant is. The chapter leads, for example, they didn't manage a specific team. That they had more a specific, like theme or speciality that they focused on, and then had managed people across a number of teams, and that had a special purpose in some way, right? So you could differentiate the product owner from the team lead, so to speak, or the people managing person.
Yeah, that's right. And I think also like coming back to this, like what we talked about in the beginning of this, like how you size up the teams and so. Because I think like say if you have this, like if you have like one data engineer like in every team, and then like but then if you then have like a chapter lead, like for that group of data engineers, like that's kind of creating a chapter and then a sense of community for those data engineers, although they are in different teams.
Yeah.
And then ideally then like the chapter lead then also like has some domain knowledge, like so they're like can have a good chapter discussion.
But I guess it's also pros and cons with having like multi-team chapter leads versus having a specific feature team engineering manager.
Yeah.
Right? Or what would you say the problems potentially with having a multi-team chapter lead versus a specific team engineering manager is?
So I think the big problem, or personally, for in the chapter lead setting, is like you're gonna have like people in a bunch of teams, and it's gonna be hard to keep track of what's happening in all those different teams.
Yes.
So you're gonna have like a less informed like discussions with your directs, and it's it's like you're gonna feel bad, or it's gonna be very hard to keep up with everything happening in all the different teams. Versus if you have more focus on one team, it's gonna enable you. More speaking from the manager side, it's going to enable you to have a better understanding of what's happening, have better discussions with the directs. And I think that is the big difference. And I think another difference then could be before perhaps I think one benefit of this, like the chapter lead model, is like then if people move between teams, for instance, like then it's like the manager isn't tied to the team. So it's kind of like natural to move between different teams. You don't need to change manager. If you then have more like a strict engineering manager setup where it's like you're going to manage this team, like every time someone moves team, like then you need to then movie manager as well.
Yeah. But help me out, who hasn't worked at Spotify? Are we talking about the roles that exist at the same point in time? So we have chapter leads, engineering manager. Are we talking about different eras, so to speak?
Yeah, so there was a transition from the chapter lead role into engineering manager.
Okay, so at some point in time we had several roles, and I think everybody, the famous Spotify model, right?
Yeah.
Chapter leads, guilds, what else were they called? Team, squads and all that, right?
Coaches, PMs.
And this was at a time, at a certain size and with a certain focus. That's how Spotify did it, and now that has evolved to something slightly different, right? Engineering manager, as an example.
That's right. Yeah.
And could you explain now what's the model now? Because I get confused because is this at the same time? Are they at how does it work? You have engineering manager for a feature team. I get that.
So in basics, like every team then has like two settings, like it's engineering manager and it's product manager. So the engineering manager is is managing or has more the people responsibility and also like the delivery responsibility. And I would say like the PM then has more like the product thinking, it's like talking with external stakeholders, like think about like the long-term like product vision and so for the team.
So the key roles is engineering manager, product manager, search, as an example, right?
That's right. And then of course like the engineers, of course.
And because then you have several different feature teams with that sort of frame. And do you talk about feature teams when it's also sort of more back-end features, or how do you have other types of roles or setups then, or you use the same lingo?
So I think it's like you have like the platform side as well. So I don't know if there's like this superset lingo, to be honest, but it's like, there is this like, the platform teams, like more like building infrastructure for others. And then it's like the people using the infrastructures. I think those are like the two big distinctions, I would say.
Yes.
And then like, just as an example, then, if like someone is building like the infrastructure, like the data infrastructure, like then, and then that's being used by multiple teams. So it's not actually like the team, like the people in the data infrastructure team are not like doing all the pipelining work, but are building the tooling for other people to do the pipelining work.
Yeah.
And should we perhaps move a bit more into the search team as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
for sure.
That would, I think most people understand basically what they do or the purpose is, and probably everyone has searched on Spotify. But how would you describe what the search team is responsible for?
So I would say it's the like the search experience, like having a great experience for people, like searching for something on Spotify, like and ensuring that they can find what they're looking for.
And what are the challenges with that? I mean, we spoke in the beginning a bit about the horrible experience that you can have from search functionality from different
e-commerce sites or
different companies
grocery
in Sweden.
Sites.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges that Spotify has to actually have an awesome search experience, we would say?
I'm thinking how much I can talk about like the challenges we but I mean of course like it's like to the basics, it's coming down to like what do the users have. I mean the users come to search and they're gonna have have something in mind, like they have something like what are they looking for, and of course like then you want to be as good as possible to understand what they're looking for as quickly as possible. I mean it's like I think like one thing that's a bit special with Spotify search is just like the instant search, like it's like search as you type,
right?
Which I think is like it's a bit different. So I mean in that setting it's also like of course like with the fewest like as quickly as possible understanding what
as few types as possible, it starts to wrap up what different artist comes up.
That's right.
You John, and before you written Taylor, you get the search for it, and then it's,
of course,
yeah.
And then I mean it's like it's like it's very broad, but then of course there's like the whole subject of personalization. So if you type something in it, I mean then you want to have or maybe you want to have the same results, but I mean like probably you have different like music tastes and so on. You probably have like what's relevant for you is maybe not be relevant for you.
Yeah. So how would you describe, how the team is structured and perhaps the main responsibilities the team has, or how would you describe that?
Yeah. So I would say it's like a few different teams. Like it's more like an API team, like more having like the interface towards search. There's like more the indexing side, like indexing all the different content we have.
Right.
And then it's more like a retrieval, also like focus like on optimizing like the retrieval aspects, and then like the ranking team, then like how do you rank the results?
And that is basically different teams that do the different parts, like ranking, etc.
That's right. So it's like, I mean, search, when you say like it's a feature team, it's not really a feature team anymore. It's like more, it's a group of teams. But I would say like a search, like I mean, search, I think it's nice to think of search as a feature. But I mean, inside search, there are multiple teams.
Yeah, so it's like a domain with subdomains in some ways.
Yeah, that's right. And then I mean, there's a team like more working on like insights and evaluation, and there's then I mean more the user-facing client team as well.
Can you just give some numbers to, you know, how many searches do you actually get per day or something? Or do you have any numbers on that?
I don't know. I mean, but I mean, do you know? I mean, if you think about how many people using Spotify, and then I mean, you can from that I think like make a guess of like it's. I mean, it's going to be a lot of searches.
So that's hundreds of millions of active users, and therefore it should be at least millions of users searching as well, right?
That's right.
Every day,
yeah,
more or less. Cool. And yeah, so what can you give a bit more understanding of what are the different teams? It's at least like 5 teams or something, or how many teams are there?
Yeah, about 5. I would say like the search problem like can be, I mean, if you take more on this the backend side, like you can split it in some sense between this, like there's a retrieval focus and there's a ranking focus. It's like you want to retrieve candidates, and then you want to rank them to have like a good ordering. And that's that's also like more on the like how it's structured right now in the inside search.
Right. So retrieval in that way is basically trying to find a candidate for a specific query and finding that from whatever catalog you have.
That's right. So I mean, of course, ideally, like you wanted to like find, but I mean, if you think of that, there's there's millions of items in the catalog as well. It's like so then like looking at like every single. I mean, ideally, you could look at like every single item in the catalog, and then like by some way, like of course, then maybe some ML function or something, like to understand like which is the best, what is the best result to return for this query. But I mean, but then that is unfeasible, like with the size of with the number of entities, and that's why it's like gets the split between the retrieval side and more the ranking side. Right. But the ranking then is doing this like the more costly side.
So and you mentioned machine learning, and of course that's one of our favorite topics, surprisingly. But how can you make use of machine learning in the search team today? Can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, of course. I would say, I guess like just start with it. I think it's like what's interesting with search, or I mean, it's search is a domain, of course, like, or it's like, I think, but I would say like it's like now if you want to be good. I could say that if you want to be a domain expert in search, like how do I improve search, like maybe from a research side as well, then you basically like need to know machine learning. I'm sure there's like maybe some subfields of search that doesn't, but I mean, it's like, it's just like it's transitioning. So it's not like you're going to be like this also like with the central team and the domain team again, like, I mean, it's not like you're going to have, you need to have the ML expertise in search, because if you want to have domain knowledge on search, you need to also like have the ML knowledge. That's what I would say.
So basically, you need to have people who knows machine learning, but they actually understands the search problem, hardcore. Yeah. What is the right type of machine learning? What is the right type of math?
That's right.
Right. For a search problem.
That's right. And I think then coming back to then the question on how you use machine learning, I think one primary example is like there is this like the concept of learning to rank, right? Which is like more like an ML algorithm, or how you would say, where it's like more this like the training examples, or you want to learn from, like for a query you're gonna have like then some graded results, and it's gonna say like this is relevant, this is not relevant, and so. And then if you produce a lot of those examples, and then you take that, and then you're gonna learn like in this like ML process, like then learn what are good results for a specific query.
Yeah, because you really have the right. You have all the results. Someone did a search, and someone started to listen, and how long did they listen for? And all of a sudden, you can do. You can really build up a training data set of when was a search successful.
That's right. Yeah.
And I guess you can use a lot of inputs to the ML algorithms for search as well.
Yeah.
Can you mention some inputs that you can potentially use to try to improve the search experience?
Yeah, of course. So I mean, there's of course like a ton of different, and I think this is like I mean, of course, like there's can be like a lot of the work you can do can be just like coming up with new features. Like I mean, what features do you want to have? But I mean, yes, to think of some, of course, like the edit distance, is a good feature.
So edit this, you have to unpack that a bit. I think
of course. I mean, if you search for something, I don't come up with a good example now, and then you're gonna get a bunch of candidates back.
Yeah.
And then, like, I mean, how close are the title of those candidates to what you search for?
Right. So just looking at the actual letters in the query or of the name of an artist or a song, and then seeing how similar they are from a letter point of view, so to speak.
Yeah. So if you search for John, and then you have like John Lennon as one of the candidates, like I mean that is going to be like a better match than if you have ABBA as like another.
Cool. So edit distance is one, I guess. Any other inputs that you can mention?
So I think one interesting feature is like a feature built by a different team, which it's a little bit similar. Like it's also a distance, but it's more like a taste distance. So if you think of the user, like I mean. You, Henrik, like what you're searching for, and then, like how that's going to differ from your results.
And he doesn't have as good taste in music as I do with dansband music.
Dansband, and this is quite the distance to.
So we have some distance.
Foo Fighters.
Yeah. So then say that you have like some way to represent your taste in music. Then you have like the same representation on the different tracks as well. It's like so then you can take the distance between. So this is like I really like dansband, and this track is dansband. So then, I mean, maybe it's like different from the edit distance. Like I mean, it doesn't matter like what you search for, but it's more like the taste of the music. So it's like how does basically like the distance as like how does this match my taste?
So it's more a personalization kind of measure of trying to match the artist to what I probably will like because of my taste in some way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one interesting aspect of this is like it's also like an interesting like more how you can like work with ML across the company, because this is like we don't build this feature. This is a different team like building this feature, and it's used for many different things inside Spotify. But we're able to like use this feature then ourselves, like because it's such a like I mean it's like the taste of a user and the taste like I mean I don't know if you should say like a taste of a track, but more like where does that fit in that like the taste space? But I mean that's a feature used for many different things.
And I think also we need to be a bit more concrete because people could be thinking taste. How do you measure the distance between taste? And I guess we can. I'm not sure what you use these days to speak about this taste, but at least to say it is some kind of vector, right? Or how would you describe what that kind of taste is represented as, so to speak?
That's right. It's a vector.
And a vector is basically like a list of numbers.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you remember the size of the vector that we have right now? Or no?
I do, but I don't know if we've shared it publicly, so I think it's better to not say.
I was also careful there. Cool, but basically you have a vector of more than 10 numbers, if we say that. And that basically you can calculate the distance, like cosine similarity or edit or the dot product basically between them, and you understand
that's right.
This is how different dansband is from
Foo Fighters,
from bad music taste like Foo Fighters. No, I actually like Foo Fighters.
So I think like more generally, I mean, like it says like you can think of it like as a way of getting like how close is this thing and this thing in taste.
Yeah. Awesome. And so in that way, that's a way to basically personalize by using a product of another machine learning team, and you can use that as an input to then do ranking, I guess, in the search team, right?
That's right. So I think it's like, I mean, it's a nice example, like with like a very useful feature, like provided by one team and then like able to be used by multiple teams in Spotify. And then of course, like we have a lot of like more search specific features as well. Yes, I mean, there's I would say like whatever you can come up with, like if you like, it's more like the imagination that's like the blocker, like what would be a good feature, and then.
I mean, maybe you can talk about this in general terms, but how do you understand your sort of roadmap of search, or where you're going, and what's the direction of where your vision is for search? Can you say anything about how you envision, where you're going with it?
What the next steps are and so?
Yeah.
I don't think I can talk too much about it.
No.
I would say like the only thing I would say is like, I mean, it has evolved. Like it is evolving quite a bit. So if you are searching for something and it's like, I mean, you can definitely notice like how it's changing like over time. And like maybe some things that didn't work before, it's kind of work now. I think that's like it's more it's the focus to fix these things that aren't working.
Yeah, and how do you identify, improvement areas or what is not working? Is it sort of from customer feedback or yourself, or how do you get your inspiration, so to speak? Do you have a system for that?
So one thing, can be more like looking at the data, like maybe like if you do, like you can look at like segmenting the data in different ways, like it's maybe different countries or maybe different queries, like and you can see there like where is it room for opportunity for improvement. I mean that's one way of doing it. And I think like something that's very interesting in this, like in work in search, and that's like we also have like a lot of user researchers work in search. So it's like coming back to this, like the sense of the feature team, it's like, or the autonomy is also like it's really like we're working with search, and it's like one big team working with search. We have like very cross-disciplined like people in that team. So we also have user researchers that can then like talk with users and like ask them to like do different things. Like, can you try to find this, or what did you look for recently, and then like talk with them like what they expect and like what they got from the search results, and then from that like also then identifying like improvement areas.
You open up a very interesting topic, and we have to go there now. Sorry, because the first impression we can get, we're working in search, and there's an engineering team, and of course there's a lot of engineer side. But now really what we stumble into is actually what I think is super important to understand the full understanding of the team disciplines. I'm like, this is an interdisciplinary team that is sort of working. So sometimes it's always an engineering company. Well, it is, but could you elaborate on the more other roles than the engineering roles here, and how that works?
Yeah.
Because I think this is important. A lot of people misunderstand how much business, psychologists, many different facets that you need in a great team. Yeah,
for sure. And I agree. I mean, I think that's, as I mentioned, I think that's what's so great with working in search. It's just like,
you said it. Yeah, I stole it. Yeah. But I wanted to highlight it, and I wanted to explore it. What is it?
It's a good point. So one thing is just like the engineers, but then you have like multiple disciplines of engineers. So I mean, we have data engineers, we have backend engineers, we have ML engineers. We have also like front-end engineers, of course.
UX, yeah.
And then, I mean, besides that, you have like the data scientists, and you have the user researchers, and then you have like then...
and what is a user researcher? What's the profile of a user researcher, just so people can follow?
So it's on my conducting this like the user research, like maybe before COVID, like traveling to meeting up with people and talking about them, like
focus groups, stuff like that.
Focus groups,
market
and like,
research type stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of like user interviews as well.
Yeah. Interviews. Yeah.
We used to have this like this room, like also like where like there was this like spy mirror, so you could have like for this type of thing, like for focus groups.
Focus groups, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think those. I hope I'm not forgetting any discipline, but I mean, I think those are more the ICs ones, and then it's like the individual contributors, and it's like the engineering managers, and then we have like the product managers.
And what about so if you're UX engineer, is that also where the service design, CX experience and all that is that sort of taking care of there?
No, that's a great point. So I forgot about the designers. Thank you.
Thank you. Otherwise, you can't go to work tomorrow.
I'm gonna do a shout out to Leandro. He asked me to shout out to him. So he's one of the designers.
Cool. Awesome. And then design and what is the job of the designer in this context?
So it is like designing the search experience, and also I think like more on a prototype stage as well. Like more like thinking like more on a design prototype, like what would be, how could that look like, and coming up with like different ideas.
Cool,
awesome. I see the time is flying away here, and we have too many topics to cover. And I thought I could let you, Anders, decide, and I give you a number of topics to choose from, and you can decide which one to take on.
Okay.
One is privacy and GDPR, and how Spotify is trying to manage that in a nice way. Another topic could be just thinking about, the last decade of Spotify and some major highlights that we could talk about. We could also speak about potentially, how we approach, or how you approach agile development in general. I mean, Spotify is in many ways seen as a role model when it comes to how to truly become agile. That could be interesting to also speak about. And perhaps another final topic could be, I think Spotify is one of the few examples that have been able to overcome the big tech giants in the world. And even though Google and Amazon and Apple and everyone has been trying to build a music service, Spotify has still persisted and won in the end, so to speak. And that's really cool that a small startup starting from Sweden is able to take on the tech giants and win. And why is that? That could be interesting to hear. Okay, so tech giants, agile, highlights, privacy. Any preference?
Oh, I don't know. I think the privacy is interesting. Mm-hmm. It's also like a bit nerdy if you want to go, or it can be if you want to.
I think it's a super important thing. Just to give my view on it to start with, and then you can start speaking a bit more about how Spotify is able to take it on. I think it's a very challenging thing, and there is new regulation coming in place soon from EU as well, called the AI Act. That will be another, way of perhaps focusing then more on AI than data, but still provide regulation that can be hurtful unless done properly. And also GDPR in some way has had the intention, I would argue, to limit a bit the big gap position that tech giants have today, and trying to take ownership in some way of the data that they have. But in reality, what happened is that they create a lot of legislation and rules that made it super hard for normal companies to be compliant with that. So they rather became safe than sorry and said, perhaps we can't use that data, let's just erase it, and then we can't build AI services on top of it. And the big tech giants had no problem, and actually Spotify didn't either, because they have taken this very seriously, of course. But a lot of other companies that are much smaller and don't have the legal resources are really scared about this, and I think it's a big issue. For one, before we go into Spotify, would you agree with that assessment that it is potentially an issue with GDPR and how people or companies are approaching using data and AI for their functionality?
I think, I would say primarily, I think it's good with this, with the focus on user privacy and having the regulation, or I think having some regulation to ensure users' privacy is the rights of a user. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no question about that. It's super important, and I think the intention of GDPR is great, and I think we all agree with that. I think it's more a question of implementation in this case, right? But
of course, then if it's if it's timely, or it's like a costly implementation, maybe that's going to be harder for smaller companies. I would also assume though, if you're...
Are you compliant on namehyresbevakning.se?
So what I do there is no comments.
Opt-in, opt-out.
There I delete everything when a user wants to be deleted. So I think if people ask for it, I can give them. I don't store anything. I don't have any. Yeah. I don't store any user data.
Yeah. But I hope you see my point.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
It is troublesome to be a proper processor or data controller and all these kind of rules that you have to abide by if you want to be properly GDPR compliant, at least, right?
But what is your angle on it, or if you go into the topic from your angle or whatever angle?
Yeah. So first of all, I think as a consumer, I think it's great. Having more. Of course, maybe it can be improved, but having some these different rights you have under GDPR, it's great, and it's super important to just the protection of the user privacy. And I think then the angle I wanted to take was more just the nerdy angle, to be honest. And it was
let's go there. Yeah.
So
where's the nerdiness? Come on, I wanted to hear some nerdy stuff.
Okay, so it's more this specific thing that so one thing I was more on the data side is the right to erasure. Or right to be forgotten, I think it's called as well. Mm-hmm. More when you request to have your data deleted, and then how do you handle that in
a huge system?
In a huge system, exactly. And I think that's the setup we have at Spotify is quite easy to explain, or it's quite quick to explain, because it's what we do is then called crypto shredding. So it's the concept is all the user data is going to be encrypted. and then you're gonna have like the encryption keys, and then when a user wants to be deleted, then you're gonna delete the key.
So then,
so it's like it's quite short like explanation, but it's like it's
very simple but effective.
Yeah, and it's like then moves. I mean, of course, like the other approach would be, or I mean, one approach could be like when user asks to be deleted, then you're gonna go over all the data, like find the data for that user, and remove it. But that's like it's.
But I think this is very interesting because technically you went another route. We encrypt everything, so we're doing it hardcore, but it also means you find it much cheaper, easier way to be the right to be forgotten to comply to that.
Perhaps we need to unpack it a bit more, because all the potential PII information, then personally identifiable information, is then encrypted, right?
That's correct.
In all the data sets where that data may exist, and then they have a key somewhere, and it's stored in a separate table. And if that key is shredded in some way, there is no way to uncrypt it, so therefore the data is not available anymore. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes. So that is the setup.
Was that something you strategized from the start? Because I think more people maybe should go down this route, because a lot of people are doing, is this is sensitive data or is it safe? Scania level 2, 3, like this. Yeah. And then not until then do we encrypt data. And here the strategy is quite different. We really focus on getting good at encryption, and now we have a different route. I think it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And I can also mention there is a nice on the Spotify engineering blog, there is a talk, a TechBytes talk about if you search for Spotify crypto shredding, you're going to find it. That's more explains it in detail as well on the service side as well.
But it sounds almost like a fairly strategic. This is the direction on how to look at this problem or topic that Spotify took. Or was it conscious? I mean, like.
I would say to be honest, because I was working in a team when we did the first implementation of this. I think we kind of stumbled upon it because it was the right to be forgotten. It was this the lawsuit I think it was in Spain.
Yeah.
And it was this we know that it was coming. We were talking with legal. We need to come up with what to do. And it was a bit. And then it was more what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And someone came up with this more this the concept basically on. And I'm sure maybe it's something that's I think now at least it's probably it's called crypto shredding, but I think at the time when it came up, it was more someone had this insight that this is a good approach for doing it, and it's when mentioned it's made total sense, but before it's kind of more some sort of revelation, almost when it's
So you were there someone cracked it in a workshop sort of thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it actually was a Spotify invention, you would say as well?
No, I don't think it was, or I don't know if it was. I'm not claiming it was in any sense. Yeah. But I mean, it was.
That's the way it felt in the workshop when you came up with it, because no one had read about it at that point.
I would say or at least my impression from the workshop was there was if maybe someone else had come up with it, it was also then rediscovered in that workshop. That was my feeling at the time. And I think if you want to go more, I don't know how much you want to go down the nerdy rabbit hole, but I think of course so say that you have all the data encrypted, but then you need to process one of those data fields. What is there? Of course, there's going to be a drawback with that,
yes, exactly.
And that is you need to then join with the keys, to access
and do
that
the
information.
decryption as well,
and do the decryption. So that of course you're kind of offsetting this. It's going to be very cheap to remove. To remove someone's data, because you remove the key, but then any data processing you want to do in PII fields is going to be more costly.
So everything is pros and cons, right? Drawbacks and all that. So it's compromise.
That's right.
A really smart, I think, approach.
I like that too.
I
really like it.
More companies could take advantage of to be compliant.
I think a lot of the traditional companies, for some reason, is a little bit we talk about, we can encrypt this and this and this, but then when I look at it, we have kind of a lot of times gone another route, right? So we are not taking the data in, or we're doing something else like that. No. So it's almost like we don't want to do this as part of our core standard process. Oh, it's going to be so heavy and so costly. I'm not sure if that's that hard. I mean, of course it's more cost, right, as you highlight, but maybe bite the bullet, learn how to, use these techniques, and then do them well and robust. And then in the end, that will be maybe easier.
I would say, this the first version of of doing it was quite easy to set up. Then, of course, then the big part is then again, like more this like the central mandate, like now this is the way we're going to do it. Like everyone needs to encrypt their data, and it's like all the data we have needs to be encrypted in this setup. Like this is what we're going to do, and then like get all the teams to do that like on the deadline.
And that's the change management headache, almost even more.
And I think that's
technical.
like, I mean, that's more when coming back to the question. I mean, that's like as a bigger company, you're going to have more data. It's going to be more teams working with data. It's going to be more kind of like that setup is going to be more annoying for a big company versus a small company. Maybe you have like only one team owning all the data. Then Naper can probably do it. I mean, of course, it's going to be work, but it's like yeah.
But I think that was a very good. That's a good tip.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's move to some more philosophical questions. I think my favorite topic of discussion, besides nerdiness, of course. That's always fun to do. But if we go a bit more general and speak about data and AI, and of course it can be abused, but it can also be used and help with a lot of things. What would you say the potential is for companies that potentially are thinking about using data and AI, and if they do that, what would the potential benefits be in some way? It's a very general question, I know. But
yeah, it's super general.
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't that like yes, coming back to what we started talking in the very beginning of the conversation, like this with the expert system. I mean,
yes,
like starting with this, going for this like very, like, I mean, you wanted to go for some, like more going for the very complex solution. I mean, it's probably better to start with something more simple.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I would say, I mean, also like in this, like in the search setting, it's not like we're not there like saying like we need to work with ML. It's more like we're gonna solve like user problems, like specific problems, and then like at the level we're at right now, like to do that we need to work with ML. But I think like if from a company side, I think it's a strange mindset to go into something and say like we're gonna work with ML, like and we need to work with ML. I think it's better to look at what problems do you have and like how are you gonna solve those problems. But then like to complement that slightly, or like to I guess like what do you say, like contradict myself. I mean, I of course also like if you don't know about ML, like you haven't done nothing with ML, then you don't kind of know the potential either.
Right.
So I mean, then doing something more for like the learning focus, maybe it's like more trying out something like to learn how it works. Yeah. So then you have like ML as a tool. I mean, that makes sense. But more like then going into like the mindset, we're gonna be like ML driven. Like everything we do is gonna be with ML. Like, I mean, that sounds strange to me. It's more like you want to solve some problems, and then maybe ML is going to be like a good way to do it.
So ML is not the goal in itself, so to speak. The problem, the actual, the solution you want to build is the reason, and then you should find the right toolbox. But I think this also comes back to what we have mentioned a number of times, which is the catch-22 problem of you can have domain experts, a person expert in searching, for example, but let's say they don't know about ML and they don't understand the technology. How could they ever understand when or why it would be useful to use ML? And then we have the other side, which is could potentially be data scientists that are super knowledgeable in ML, but they have no clue about search domain. So they don't know what the proper thing to do is from a data science point of view, and the domain experts in search don't know what to use in ML, and then they have this kind of catch-22 problem. Would you agree with that? And if so, what's the solution, please? If you tell us, please.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely agree, but I think that's. I mean, I don't have like the perfect solution, but I think this like the learning aspect. Then, like, I mean, perhaps then like if the domain experts don't have like the ML, but it's like the data scientists do, and maybe like wouldn't it then like, I mean, maybe they can do some more joint like proof of concept or something more like not with maybe the aim of like this is going to be. Like replacing everything, but more like as a learning experience. Like the domain expert is like going to be learning about it. Like that's more the focus.
But I want to unpack this a little bit, because I think this is a very important problem that we need to understand, right? Because at some point you're a tech company and using tech, and then we can argue, well, which tech to use. But clearly, what I see is like the tech companies who have innovation in their DNA, so to speak. They are coming into the problem with the right mindset. I have a problem, I want to solve it. And then they have tech savviness to start understanding what type of problem what type of solution or technology fits this problem, all the way up to now we are mature to say ML is a good idea. I mean, like the real problem, if I take Sweden as a average, is like we have so little knowledge at all around data and AI, I would argue. So we don't even understand we have a problem, although we are working on pen and paper. So you can take this whole story all the way back to I'm riding a horse. I don't know that cars exist. So, I don't really know that, we need to find a problem. Well, the problem with my horse is that it shits too much, right? So we have this huge gap, I think, is the problem that companies are not exploring or not trying and not learning. So this divide between people who are doing that and have that in their DNA is just growing and growing and growing. So I think that's the catch-22 that, well, you might understand that there is huge potential in some technologies and data. So maybe you need to experiment to learn in order to basically be able to frame the problem in a new light. I don't know. Yeah. I think this is a real catch-22.
But definitely, I agree with that, like the experiment to learn. And I know also we've done a lot of like internal trainings at Spotify. Like there's both like for engineers, and also but for PMs, like more like machine learning for PMs, like to more get a like understanding of like what it can bring. Yeah. So I think this like the learning concept. But then but your analogy with this, like you have a car or you have a horse and you don't know about cars. But then in reality, like in that analogy, you would be out on your horse, and then you're gonna be overtaken by a car. Yeah. Then you're gonna know like what was that? And you're probably gonna. It's like it's not like you wouldn't know about cars. And I think like in the same setting, maybe like if you have, I don't know what it would be exactly, but in the search domain, maybe you have like this like you have some e-commerce site or something, and then it's like and you feel like this isn't really working on my site, and then you can without knowing about them, you can go to like a different site and like try out something and see like that works there. Like what are they doing? Maybe you can, if you're not a competitor, maybe you can talk with them. Maybe you can go more. It's like if you have curiosity, I think it's like but it feels like you should be able to.
I understand what you're saying, but I would argue then people riding on their horse must be sleeping, because if they don't understand that there are 5 or 10 companies in the world that are worth much, much more than the rest of the world, and they're clearly, they are on a different planet in terms of how they operate, in terms of, and can use data and AI. And literally, I think then the problem is that, well, they don't belong to my industry, so you're comparing yourself with your peers. So basically, I don't know, so it's a little bit like, have you been asleep now driving your horse for the last 5 years? I'm serious. Like even quite large corporations where inside the company, some people know exactly about it. The AI divide exists inside companies. So so what's the problem here? Are we asleep then and being overtaken by cars? I think so.
It's very hard for me to say, because I guess like
you are so.
No, I'm also like now I've been for Spotify for soon 10 years. I have that's where I've been. So I don't really. That's like it's hard to compare with other companies. I've been working mainly within Spotify.
No, but and I think this is really good, right? Because from the outside, I think you have a very fantastic culture of learning and innovation and experimentation as part of the DNA in the company. Like we've talked about this, we're going to fail the fastest, right? That's amazing, and that is not really, I think, the cultural standard in most organizations and companies in Sweden today. So I think in one way you are living the dream in this way that you are not sitting and falling asleep on your horse. You will notice when another search engine is better.
Yeah, hopefully. No, but for sure. But it's also like, of course, like the different domains you're in. Yeah. Just comparing back with like the Space Corporation, if you're building, if you're building satellites, it's not like you don't want to build like super fast, like the satellites send them up and then they're gonna crash. It's like you need to.
And it's a different domain.
Of course, it's like so it depends. I guess like you mentioned, like you work at Scania, also like you don't have. You have the safety regulation. You don't want to have like this, like the truck that just runs berserk. No. There's very different.
So we need to do it in a different way. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But speaking about the Space Corporation, I think that's an interesting one. And then speaking about tech giants, and we have the Elon Musk companies of the world like SpaceX, etc. That is in some way disrupting also the space industry. Would you agree for one that is happening right now? That SpaceX is disrupting the space industry and taking over more and more in how to truly do space travel?
I guess. By this, like bringing down the launch cost. Yeah. For sure.
Like a tenth of the cost or whatever it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it's like, of course, like that's a huge change. And yeah. Yeah,
but yeah. So going back a bit to the issue that I would argue, at least, that Elon Musk, have all these kind of companies, with Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink and Boring Company and PayPal and whatnot, Starlink, and I can continue. And it's a bit surprising how he's been able to do that. And we also have the tech giants, as we mentioned. And for one, we have Spotify that's been able to actually overtake the tech giants, which is, I think, really surprising and amazing in some way, that the startup can actually take over, even though the Google and the Amazon and Apple of the world tried to win in the music industry but failed. Why would you say, for one, a company like Spotify or a company like SpaceX were able to disrupt and take over NASA's of the world and other like normal space industry companies? What do you think that what's the secret? Super simple question. Yeah. But you see my point, it's sometimes, a small company is able to overtake the big giants and then disrupt the market in some way.
Yeah, for sure.
Why do you think that is? Do you think there is some easy way to understand this?
I don't know, but I mean, isn't it also like going back to this, like the innovator's dilemma, and it's like, it's like the smaller startups, like more nimble, like faster moving, maybe targeting a customer segment that doesn't like the big giants aren't looking at. Then of course, I mean, it's very hard to do predictions for the future. So it's like, it's like this also, like the question of like smaller companies and so, but I mean, at the same time, like they're going to be faster. I still believe in this, like the innovator's dilemma, and it's like, it's going to be.
But the innovator's dilemma says the opposite in some way. It says that the one that is the first will fail in some way, right? But still, I would argue that Spotify was the first, at least in doing music in this way.
I don't know what's the definition of the innovator's dilemma. Is it the fastest, or is it the first, or where is it? I don't know the definition.
I haven't read the book. It's like, I have to admit, but I mean, the way I've thought of it is more this, like the big company more getting complacent, and it's like it's going to be the fast mover coming in from like taking more.
This angle I understood.
Yeah, and also like, I mean, taking more the. I don't know if that's correct either, but I mean, I also thought of this like coming in and maybe taking like some niche of the market that's not big at first, but then it's going to be growing faster and overtaking like the majority. Like, I mean, like evolving of I don't know what's a good example, but like the SSD disk, like overtaking like the previous like disk drives. Like more, I mean, this like how it's like the generation of product, like the product development.
Yeah, but it's also, I think, the innovator's dilemma also mentions the fact that the one that is the first in some field has to take the drawback of actually doing all the research and doing the heavy work of making that new way, the new approach actually do work. And that means that some other companies, perhaps from China or whatnot, can then overtake them, but by not having all the research work necessary to actually make this work, therefore the first mover is losing out. Hence the innovator is losing in some way. So it's also a problem of being a first mover in some kind of field. And sometimes, but that was not the case for Spotify, and I don't think it was the case for SpaceX either. And they still succeeded in some way.
Isn't it also? I mean, so now, I mean, again, I haven't read the book, but I'm thinking I've thought of it more as like if you think like in the automotive industry, maybe like then Ford wasn't the first. Yeah. I'm guessing, I'm not an expert here, but I'm guessing like they weren't the first car. Yeah. But then like they were overtaken in the industry. Mm. But I mean, isn't it also true like then like they didn't innovate? Like it was like this the T Ford. And they kept it around for ages, and then like GM overtook them as like the main car company by then like innovating on top of Ford. So that's more, I thought of it like that. Like
but Ford actually wasn't the first, as you said, but what they were really good at was the production line, right?
Exactly.
So Ford's innovation is the production line and not the car invention.
Yeah. So they weren't the car innovator. Yeah. Therefore, they escaped the innovator dilemma and instead could take advantage of other innovators by just producing it and actually putting it in production, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, then also like it's not like, I mean, Ford had this like huge market share of the car sales. Mm. But I mean, then they were also like overtaken in some sense. Sure. Then after that, so, I mean, they
had a big success at least.
Of course, I mean, I mean they have, and I mean, but that's more how I thought of the innovator's dilemmas. It's not about this. Like, I mean, it's about like this really successful company then being overtaken like later on. So it's not about, or that's more how I thought about it. But I mean, I agree with you. Like it's a good point with this also. Like it's like the first comer needs to do the
But could we, you know, let's talk Spotify. You know, are there any sort of small things or in the culture or in the leadership or something that sort of makes this work, so to speak, in something that supposedly shouldn't have worked? First of all, to get all the licensing and all that wasn't supposed to work, right? And then in the end, outcompete Apple. You know, they with the iPod and all that and their music, iTunes, they were of course the ones that should be supreme on this. You know, from the outside, or if you look at iTunes and where the iPod was at this point in time. But so can we find some ingredients that, you know, I think this whole innovation and fail fast and agile, I mean, like the core DNA of Spotify and what you are now, people are, you know, we love you because you're, you know, the best of in agile, like a role model. I think those things is probably one part of this ingredient, that you were good at innovating and moving fast, continuously, even when you scaled.
Yeah.
This is my outside view on this. I don't know. What's the inside view?
I mean, like what I see more like from the inside, or what I think of this, like I mean, personally, I think this like the autonomous team is like is hugely like important. Like it kind of like having this like the speed of execution by the autonomous team. I think that is has been like a huge thing. And I think like more.
So what happens if you don't have autonomous team? What happens then?
Yeah. I mean, it's. I would phrase it this, I guess, in like more this like the classic like motivational side as well. Like it's more interesting to be told, like you get a problem to solve, than getting like told this is how you're going to solve it. Yeah. Isn't that like a basic explanation of it? So it's like it's going to be more. It's going to be more rewarding. It's going to be more fun. It's going to be more like easy to attract people. It's going to be easier to retain good people. It's like that aspect.
I mean, I certainly agree, and you feel you get the sense of pride, so to speak, because you made the decisions to how to solve this. Yeah. You also have the cross-disciplinary kind of setup where you basically can iterate very quickly because you own a whole part of a certain function, a certain product or feature. And if you didn't have that, you would have to have a lot of dependencies to other teams, which means that you have to be, you know, you are so dependent on them, so you can't move quickly anymore.
Yeah.
So this kind of connection, I would say, with autonomous and also having interdisciplinary teams that works and owns a specific part that they can choose how to work with themselves.
That's right. Of course, like you also need like the speed of execution, also coming from, of course, like having, like if you're autonomous, also like in making your own decisions, like in how to proceed. Because of course, like you don't want to be blocked all the time by other people. Like that's important, of course.
Let me try to quote Lalle. Lars Albertsson, I guess you work with Lalle as well at some point?
Yeah, I did. I interviewed him as well.
That's right. It's funny. But he says some, you know, we talk about, you know, that you went for Hadoop and MapReduce and everything like this quite early, right? When it was a quite basic technology. Lalle always talk about what he felt was a data transparency in Spotify. I like the way to deal with data. So one part of this story I think has to do with, from the get-go, you were very, very early with the big data technology stack, which fostered a culture of data transparency and savviness around data. So you really grow up on this new data AI first society macro life cycle. You've been following another S-curve, is what I would say, you know. This is the industrial era, and you were already following this. And some of these things, I don't know, flukes or whatever, creates is part of the culture, part of the DNA, like data transparency, autonomous teams, and there's another thing, and this whole industrial, like the factory approach to data and tech, you know, which I think is that's part of the success, I would argue. I'm trying to rephrase Lalle a little bit. You probably heard it before.
Yeah, but it's a good point, and I think this, of course, like this, having all the data like in one place, like I mean, it's going to be, like makes it easy for everyone like to do, of course,
to innovate on.
Yeah, to innovate and like with join with the data, like able to access all the data and like can work with it as you, not needing to go like to all these different databases and different teams like to get the data. Of course, that is a huge win as well.
Yeah.
And I know something I remember from Lalle, like working with him, was that he had such a big emphasis on also creating like more the core data, and more as an interface as well. So because the upstream data from the clients could change, but you want to have more like a stable interface then to the end data access. I mean, that's like...
so there's a couple of brilliant stuff which is quite techy, right? That has sort of enabled, there's a lot of enablement, like transparency and stuff like that, the tech stack, that sort of, I think is part of this, ingredient in the secret sauce.
I mean, it's very hard for me to say if this is the ingredient that make then like Spotify, have the number of users it has today, or if it's like that's more, it's of course like from the inside and working with it, it's like it's been hugely, it's been great for enabling the development of data and so. Yeah. But if that has then a direct relationship then on like the Spotify as a business,
because then of course you have the whole business side and how you're managing to actually get all the catalogs and all that.
Exactly.
That is a huge job.
Yeah, and I would say, again, this there is this the podcast, like the Spotify product story, that talks a bit about that as well. Because that's nothing I have worked with. It's hard for me to share any personal insights or so. But that podcast is very good and explains part of that as well.
Cool.
It is really good, actually. I must.
I need to
recommend
go.
that.
I haven't heard that.
It's really good.
The Spotify product story by Gustav Söderström.
Available on Spotify.
Yeah.
Surprisingly. How surprising. Cool. Anders, I think we have to turn to the last kind of questions that we have. And the next question would be, what's up next in your life? Privately, professionally? What's going to happen in coming months?
Yeah, so it's I'm going to go on parental leave. That's
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Good. That was a very relevant question.
Second or third? No,
third.
Oh.
But I'm working a bit more, so but in February gonna go on parental leave. So I think right now it's more like, to be honest, it's more like maybe like handover, thinking about like the Q1 a bit, and then I'm gonna go on parental leave. So it's nothing I'm not gonna be involved in. I'm not ramping up like something really big right now.
Ramped up. Yeah, you're ramping up on another front.
Yeah.
Any plans for the parental leave? If it's a third kid, perhaps you can do some stuff during the parental leave, or continue working on namehyresbevakning.se or something. Or?
Yeah, I think that's what I've done partly on the previous parental leave. So I think that's probably nothing major, but I'm hoping to actually try out some of these like demo things I mentioned, like this, like maybe this location prediction, or this the housing, time and housing queue prediction.
Research function, perhaps.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to do any. I think the front end thing is going to take too long. So it's not going to be good. So it's
awesome.
But that's the bigger plans ahead.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds great. Anyone that you would recommend or would like to have us invite into this show that you would like to listen to yourself, perhaps?
Yeah, so one thing is, we both worked with a lot of excellent people at Spotify. And that's what's been so good with working at Spotify as well, or one thing.
Yeah.
So of course there's I don't know if you from the old analytics team and so many of them are working now in very interesting other places. Many of them are at Kry, for instance. I think that would be interesting, talking with them about medicine and
Elias or someone, or
yeah, for instance, or Ludwig or William, perhaps.
Ludwig is there as well. I didn't know.
And otherwise, if I were to name one person, otherwise I think Jens Larsson who's currently at Tink is.
Didn't he just switch, or is this okay? He's at Tink, right? Yeah. Okay. I saw something on LinkedIn. I'm not sure what it was, but yeah.
Maybe it's
Okay. But
maybe it is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but he's. I remember Jens Larsson. He was the magician of BigQuery as well, and he worked at Google before, and he knew a lot about the internals of BigQuery. I remember, and he could write these kind of insanely complicated kind of BigQuery queries.
That's right. So he went to after Spotify, he went to Tink as I believe head of analytics, I think. Then otherwise, like besides that, because it's great people, but like otherwise, like personally, I think it would be nice to also hear something from like the Swedish automotive industry, like maybe with autonomous driving. So I don't have any connections, but that's like would be interesting to hear. Maybe from Scania, but I think otherwise, like maybe from like Volvo as well would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, we have some connections, maybe.
Yeah. Like this, also like the Volvo, like, they had this partnership with Uber. Like, Like
there's many things, and we have Einride.
Yeah, for sure.
It's an interesting company.
Yeah. Some people from both Spotify and Swedish Space Corporation at Einride.
At Einride, right? Yeah.
It's a cool company. Do you think any of these kind of self-driving car companies have any chance against Tesla and Elon Musk kind of companies? Say yes, please. Spotify had, therefore otherwise should, right?
Yes.
That's a good answer. Good ending.
Good. Awesome. It's been a true pleasure to have you here, Anders Nyman, and it was quite some time that we saw each other last, but nice to see you again, and nice to see that it's progressing really well in Spotify as well, and with the search team and everything. And I must say, you're an extremely knowledgeable person, but also a very humble person and very nice person. And I wish more people understood that. And I think a lot of people have during hearing your comments here as well. So thanks, Anders Nyman. It's been a true pleasure. And I hope you stay on for some time for our after work as well.
It's been my pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.